Okay, hi folks. This is the Playground Getting Started tutorial. I'm just going to go through the entire tutorial. I've got it on screen off to the side here, so I'm going to be going through it step by step, but I'm going to be looking at the Unity build in this video. So I'm going to scroll down, and there's a video at the top of the tutorial that I'm going to skip, and I'm just going to jump into step 2, which is making your first game. And so the first thing that it's asking you to do is go into images, into spaceships, and drag your spaceship in. Once you have the spaceship in here, it's suggesting that we change its name to ship. And it's also saying that we should change its tag to player. And we're going to talk about tags a little bit later. The next thing that we need to do is set it up so that it can move. So to do that, we need to close the images folder, open the scripts folder, and under movement, there is a script called move. Now I can apply this a couple different ways. If I have the ship selected, I can drag move onto the inspector over here, and it will be added. I need to drag it below any of the other information or code that's in there, or I can just drop it straight onto the ship in the scene. I'm going to drag it straight onto the ship in the scene. There's a third way to add it. I can say add component, and I can type in move, and it would be move with arrows is the script that we just placed. I'm going to use that add component for a few things a little bit later. I find it really quick and easy. Okay, so I have the move on this ship. I personally prefer to move with the WASD key, so I'm going to set it to do that. And I think in here it's also suggesting that if you would like to, you can orient to direction, which will change the orientation of the ship rather suddenly. And then it's also saying that you might have your gizmos set to be too big. So if you have a situation like this where you can't see the ship, you can also select it over here. It sort of goes away. But gizmos, 3D icons can be made smaller so they don't get in the way. Okay. Next, we're going to try and tune the physics. So everything in Playground is working with physics, and so this is applicable to whether you're doing an adventure game with people on the ground or spaceships in the air. I'm going to select the ship, and it automatically put the rigid body 2D code onto the ship when I added move with arrows. And so it's suggesting that we change gravity to 0 because the ship will literally just fall if we have gravity on. The next thing that it is suggesting after we turn gravity to 0 is, actually that's where it says oriented direction. But the ship drifts a lot when we press play. Let's actually just go ahead and press play. So when I'm moving, it just sort of keeps going. I just tapped the key for a second there. Now that also brings up, I think in class I've told you already, under the game tab, you can say maximize on play. That's the difference between seeing it in the window right here and seeing it much larger like this. The tutorial also gives you the warning that I've already given all of you about play mode and how I have my screen tinted red so that I don't accidentally forget that I'm in play mode. And maximize on play will also help with that problem so you don't accidentally do work and forget about it. But I'm getting off track. It's telling me that I should up the friction, and it's suggesting it we put 10 into the friction, and now when I press play, it's definitely a lot snappier, but it's a lot slower too. So I'm going to also up that speed to 8. And now when I press play, it feels like it's got a little bit better balance. Okay. So congratulations, you've made something that you can play, but it's not really a game because it doesn't have any obstacles. Let's add some obstacles. So I'm going to close scripts and I'm going to go to images. I'm going to go to asteroids and I'm going to drop asteroid 2 into my scene. Okay, so in order to have this be a meaningful object, I need to have it set so that I can collide with it. So I need to select it, and the easiest way for me is to go to Add Component and say Rigid Body 2D, just like we had on the ship. Then we're also going to add Polygon Collider 2D. Now, if this is a Polygon Collider, the ship also needs to be a Polygon Collider. Say Add Component. There we go, Polygon Collider again. And now that they're both colliders, they'll be able to collide with each other. If you're doing this tutorial and the ship is able to move through the asteroid without colliding, then one of those objects you've forgotten to make into a Polygon Collider. Let's test this. And I can already tell you that when we test it, we're going to have a little surprise. The asteroid falls because we didn't change gravity on the asteroid yet. So let's change gravity to 0. Let's give it a little bit more mass so that when we run into it, which we'll test now, it's going to have a little bit more substance feeling. There we go. It resists being pushed. And I can increase that mass to give it the feel that I want it to have. We can also tweak the friction and the angular friction of that asteroid to make it feel the way that we want it to. But right now there's no consequences for hitting the asteroid. I can hit it multiple times. So the tutorial suggests that we include modify health attribute as a script. So we're going to select this. We're going to go to our scripts window and attributes. So modify health attribute, I'm going to drop onto that asteroid. And essentially that means that when it gets touched, there will be a -1 applied to the health in the game. But right now there is no health being tracked, so I need to take the health system attribute and drop that onto the ship. If I then select the ship, scroll down, health system, here we go. And that health number can be changed, so like I could make that 5. So if I come over and 1, 2, 3, and when I hit it a 5th time, which evidently I already did, the ship is destroyed because I have no more health. Okay, now the tutorial talks a little bit about prefabs. Prefabs are really useful. There's a video link in the written tutorial that would be a lot of help. I'm going to summarize, which is you can make a prefab by taking, well, first we've made this object. It's been customized. It's no longer just an image. It has sort of intelligence embedded in it. It's a rigid body. It's a collider. It's got a health system. And so now if I go to the Prefabs tab here and drag the asteroid from here into here, it's going to make this into a prefab, which shows up as this blue box. If I want to, I can then delete that from my scene by just selecting it in the hierarchy and hitting delete. And maybe I don't want to call it asteroid 2. Maybe I want to call it asteroid A. I might actually make the same name over here. And then if I drag it into my scene, there it is. If I drag another one into my scene, I don't see anything because they're in the same place. Now these are all going to act the same. And so if I press play and I go and hit this one once, twice, oh, looks like I bumped it a few too many times. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 3. There we go. I bumped it enough times that the ship blew up, and it's true for both of them. Now the cool thing about a prefab is if you want to make a change to it, the change will be for all versions or what's called instances of the prefab in the scene. So I can come here and I can double click asteroid A, and I'm now editing asteroid A. I could like move it around. I could change its position. Scroll out a little bit. it's using a sprite, but what if I just change gravity? Let's change gravity to 1. And then I'm going to go back to the scene. It's going to say, hey, you made changes, but you didn't save them. Let's save them. And now if I press play, both of the asteroids have gravity and they now fall. Cool. I should also be able to double click this prefab and go into it and change gravity back to 0. Hit return. I'm going to go back. Actually, that is incorrect. Yes, that is incorrect. We didn't actually go inside of it. You can see how that's in bold. That means that I've made a change to it, and I'm essentially overriding the prefab. That's dangerous, but it's a good thing to teach you. I should have double clicked it. There we go. Sorry, it used to be that I could just double click the image, but now on a prefab, if I click the arrow next to it, then I go inside it. Then I can make the change. And then when I click back out, go back to scenes and save it, it will change it for all other objects. Now here's the thing. This is where it gets tricky. This still says 1 in bold. Because I changed that, I was overwriting it. And now I'm going to have to revert. So when I press play, none of them have gravity. And I can double check that. That's no longer bold. This one's no longer bold. Okay. Scroll back out a little bit. Move that over using my middle mouse. Okay. So that was a little bit of a detour from the tutorial, but it's helpful to know about prefabs and the benefits of using prefabs. It's also thought as better for the computer in terms of processing. It doesn't think of things as individual objects. It just thinks of them all as the same object. Okay, so right now it's a little problematic when I'm running into these asteroids. There's no feedback that lets me know I'm getting hit. So the tutorial adds a user interface so you can visualize your health. So we're in the prefabs and user interface is right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that into the scene. That adds this larger box. Let's go ahead and hit play. And that is set up with a prefab that includes health, so that when I go over here and hit that, that's 1, that's 2, that's what's happening. I'm hitting it multiple times on accident. 1, oh, that was quick and removed all my health. Okay. Now, if I wanted to make this more complicated, I could also go and say duplicate. And that's just going to be another instance. I can also do the same thing by dragging another one in. I could move them around, and I could make it really a difficult field to navigate. Okay. So the next step is adding a goal. So if this is a game, what's it all about? Let's say we want the ship to collect some stars without crashing into the asteroids. Once all the stars are collected, the game is won. But if you crash too much, it's game over. So it suggests going to the Images tab again. And under the Images tab, going to Collectible. Interesting. Okay, it says go to the Images folder and get the star, but it doesn't say where the star is. So where would the star be? Game Elements? There we go. Game Elements. Let's drag the star in. Okay, once you have it, then let's close Images and go to Scripts and go to Attribute and Collectible Attribute. Let's go ahead and add that to the star. Script requires a 2D collider to work. Which shape do you want it to be? If you're not sure, choose a polygon. Yeah, polygon probably makes sense. Let's see. I'm going to just go ahead with circle. Circle's a little bit dumber, and it might mean that there are some spots where I'm picking it up before I'm actually touching it, but I think circle's a little cleaner. Let's take that user interface. Let's actually move it to the bottom if I can, and let's select that star. And oh, did that do what I think it did? Look at that. Here's a problem. Because my user interface was above my star and I was trying to place my collectible on the star, I accidentally placed collectible on the user interface, which is horrible. So I'm going to click that and say remove component. And I'm going to do that one more time. I'm hitting those 3 dots on the right and saying remove component. Great. That's really easy to teach. Actually making that mistake, it's almost like it was intentional. It gives me an opportunity to show you something. Okay. So a safer way to do this would be to select the star and drag the collectible onto the inspector. Let's go ahead and say circle again. Ooh, that circle is way too big. Let's fine tune that circle. How about 1? No? How about 0.8? Ooh, that's still too big. How about 0.7? That's feeling kind of good. Okay. Now, we have the collectible script. Select that again. We have the collectible script. We have the circle collider. That is interesting because it's actually suggesting that we use Polygon Collider. Polygon Collider 2 in the script. So let's see what that does. Look at that. That actually is cleaner. And that is the difference. Let's go ahead and remove our circle collider. That is so much cleaner. Let's use it. Okay, let's select it again. And we want to make sure is trigger is turned on. This is going to let it trigger other things. And so anything that is a trigger it's essentially a special type, and it's going to allow us to trigger the special condition here. So if you play the game now, you will notice star gets collected by the ship. Let's do that. All right, gets collected by the ship, and my score goes up. So now we want to duplicate it as many times as we think it's necessary, and they're suggesting 5. So why don't I go ahead and take this star, let's turn it into a prefab by going in here. Okay. Unity now, essentially when you do that, it makes the one in the scene a prefab, so I don't need to really delete it and drag it back. It used to be that the one in the scene wasn't a prefab automatically. I'm going to hit Control D. I'm going to move this one around. D, move it around. D, move it around. D, move it around. That's way too easy. But we're going to be able to make it work. So it's distributed around the game, and now we want to create the you win message. Let's select the user interface. Let's actually open that up. Here's the win panel. Win label. Score to win, there we go. Here's the score to win, 5. Okay, and that should trigger the win panel. So everything's already built into the user interface. Let's go ahead and 1, 2, 3. Oh, hit an asteroid. 4 and 5. There we go. I win. So if you wanted to make some customizations to this, which I think would probably be a really good idea, you can select the ship and you can try changing the scale of the ship. So what if we said 0.1, 0.1? That's too small. What if we said 0.25, 0.25? What if we moved some of these around a little bit so you really had to navigate around them? Could probably even duplicate some of these asteroids at this point. Make one that's a little bit harder to get to. Now, one thing to notice is that, at least hopefully you can notice, but from my feeling playing the game, when I've changed the size of the ship, it feels very different. So, and oftentimes it makes sense to tweak the size and scale of the pieces, which in many ways affects the mass, and then the friction and all of that, you get that set in the beginning. In this case, I would probably want to go back to my ship and make some tweaks here. Like maybe I need to have some more friction. That's definitely feeling a little bit better. It's still pretty zippy. Great. There we go. Okay. So that is the Playground Getting Started tutorial, and I've gone pretty in depth and taken a good amount of time. Also taught you about prefabs and looked at a few other things, gone a little bit more in depth, so hopefully that's helpful. And again, this is a duplication of what we did in class. So if you're able to follow along, you don't need to do this tutorial, but if there's anything you want to recover from what we covered in class, this would be a great way to do it. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.